Concerns have been raised around poor ventilation, test and trace functions and exam plans as well. A little earlier, I spoke to James McEnany. He's a former secondary school teacher, lecturer and author of Class Rules, The Truth About Scottish Schools. And I began by asking James what the next few weeks might look like.
It looks for all the world as if the Scottish Government has simply decided that very, very large numbers of young people, of children and their teachers are going to get COVID, and that's fine because we are, as of tomorrow, sending tens of thousands of teachers and hundreds of thousands of pupils back into schools. And in many cases, for example, primary pupils, they are receiving no protection whatsoever, really, aside from maybe opening a window, which in January and February in Scotland has, of course, all of its own problems.
Right, and of course, you know, the advice is there about ventilation, etc. But in practical terms, you having been in the classroom yourself, what barriers are there to, you know, what obstacles are just going to be faced by teachers and by students to, you know, despite, you know, the encouragement for certain mitigations, in practical terms, they may be harder to implement?
Well, the simple fact is we live in Scotland. So if you want all the windows open in January and February, that's fine. But anyone who tells you that's not going to have an impact on young people's learning is just an idiot, or they're lying to you. So there's definitely that. There's no question at all that we've done nothing whatsoever in 2 years to make classrooms safe other than, say, open some windows. It's disgraceful, and it isn't going to hold over the next couple of months, at least not if we want schools to do anything more than babysitting. So there's that to come. And on top of that, as of tomorrow, we have potentially massive problems simply with large numbers of not just teachers, but also pupils being absent at any one time, causing massive disruption to learning, all of which was predictable, but for which we have taken pretty much no mitigating action at all.
I mean, you know, someone putting across the opposite view might say that, you know, a return to remote learning or to homeschooling might be equally as detrimental to a pupil, both in terms of, you know, their education, but also for their mental health, for the mental health of their parents too. Can you do you take that point? What sort of middle ground would you like to reach, or do you think we should be returning to homeschooling full stop?
I mean, nobody wants, you know, kids out of school. I've got a wee boy. I don't want him out of school, you know, for all the reasons that you say. Everybody knows it has an impact on learning. It's got an impact on their well-being. However, we find ourselves in a situation just now where 2 years into a pandemic and more than 6 years after apparently being told we were to judge them on their record, the government has failed to take action to make schools safe. So given the massive disruption we're about to see to learning, that's got to be factored in as well. That people have got this idea that as long as schools are open, then everything is normal and we can just keep on ticking by. The fact that doors are going to open tomorrow does not make schools mean they're in a normal situation, and it does not mean that what's going to be happening in classrooms is any sort of high quality learning, because in many cases that simply is not going to be possible. In many cases, therefore, as much as remote or perhaps blended learning models are a million miles off ideal, they are certainly things that should be in the mix just now. It is, you know, is it the case that school closures should, in theory, be off the table, to use the government's lines, after 2 years? Yes, it definitely is. But because of this government's failures, school closures actually should not be off the table at this point, if that's what's required to keep people safe and to keep case rates down.
Well, a Scottish Government spokesperson told us that the safety and well-being of pupils, teachers and school staff is their top priority. They say our updated guidance on reducing COVID risks in schools, which is informed by experts, includes strengthened advice on ongoing CO2 monitoring and ensuring good levels of ventilation are maintained. And they told us that they've provided £10 million of additional funding to local authorities for these specific purposes, on top of £90 million of previous COVID logistics funding, and they say they will continue to closely monitor the situation. Well, let's talk to some parents now.